Welcome to this afternoon session. Now we will move into presenting the project. We have 3 presentations. Thor Sigfusson will be talking about the Ocean Cluster Alliance, David Moritsen, Innovative Fish Counters, and Christian Freyr Kristjansson from Clark Innovation. We will have the format that we will take the presentations and have the questions after all of the presentations. So, Thor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Guðmundur. Appreciate the opportunity to be able to introduce to you the collaboration that we've had in the North Atlantic among clusters. As it is called, this is basically called strengthening cooperation and best practices between clusters around the North Atlantic Ocean and how it can lead to new opportunities. The North Atlantic project was initiated by the Iceland Ocean Cluster, supported by Nordic Innovation and NORA, and the focus is on exploitation of resources in the ocean and beneath the seabed, transport by sea, energy at sea. This is the setup at the beginning of the project to work on these tasks. And the goal of the project was to map marine clusters in the North Atlantic, strengthen relationships among these clusters, build arenas to communicate their activities, and develop stronger networks in ocean marine sectors. Why is this important? We first and foremost in Iceland feel that there are opportunities in strengthening the image of the North Atlantic marine market, but also basically to try to strengthen relationships, which we feel in many ways have been rare regarding many of the areas in fisheries. Mostly they have been in research, but relationships between entrepreneurs in many of these countries have been often lacking. So stronger cooperation may become a vehicle for improved performance and better competitiveness. What we actually did was to focus on these countries that I list there. These are Greenland, Canada, Norway, Iceland, Faroe Islands, and Denmark. And we have been discussing with Sweden. We also introduced the concept to our Irish friends. So we have been looking into possible expansion of the network. But the main thing probably for me is that we are building this concept on a very similar note as we've done with clusters in general. And we were obviously combining research that we have already done within our different countries into clusters. And clusters are nothing more than just networks of companies that have decided to work together to create value. And this cluster development picture, a little bit too complicated to present in one slide, shows the method that has been used on a global scale in most countries. And it so happens that we mainly duplicated our concept, the Iceland Ocean Cluster, with the Norwegian clusters. And I think they took their ideas from somewhere else, because I've seen some of the international literature is basically building on a very homogeneous theme regarding clusters. So I'll go through it step by step, and my idea here was just to show you how we are basically using a menu. There's nothing rocket science about this. This is just a menu how to build relationships. We know how to do it within the country, within industries. The only thing that was the challenge for us was to try to do this over border, because that's really challenging for clusters. They build very much on regional thinking, regional relationships. So how could we do it? So we basically, I would like to start by indicating that, as I said in the beginning, we use the same methodology. So the first step was basically to introduce the relevance, identifying or prioritizing clusters, and number 3, initial analysis, and then forming the leadership group. And I'll show you how we went through this step by step. So at the beginning, as I said, we had the participants, which is basically the leadership group, being Oceans Advance in Newfoundland, Vinnuhúsið in the Faroe Islands, Innovation in Norway, Olav Bardalen, Knapp, which is in Greenland, Tønnes Kaka Bertelsen, then Per Erik Dalen from Kunskapsparken and NCE Maritime in Ålesund, and then from Denmark, Maritime Development Center of Europe, and finally SINTEF from Robert Wolf from SINTEF. What we did at the beginning was basically to map the opportunities that we saw in relationships with these individuals and these clusters. We published a report that's called North Atlantic Ocean Clusters, Increased Opportunities Through Cooperation. This was done in early 2011, presented in the end of 2011. So we came up with a mapping of the opportunities that we saw. We obviously saw the research as a big part in what is going on in these areas. Environment, biotech, services. Shipping is very large in most of these countries. Services regarding shipping. In food as well, obviously fisheries, aquaculture, biotech, services, management. And in the energy sector, we had renewables, services, oil and gas. The hard part was then to figure out who is doing best. We came up with some kind of analysis, which is not, once again, done in a way that we can say that we can prove it, but at least we were discussing this within the cluster collaboration, who is doing what and who's best at doing what. So there was an interesting discussion leading to further in the report that we did. Once again, we're doing the initial analysis on who is doing what, who's doing absolutely better than others, benchmarking of the clusters, etc. Another very important part is basically to try to get the leadership group together. So the first meeting was in Iceland. And the president of Iceland was very, we were honored by the fact that he allowed us to visit him, and it gave us a good start, I think, in many ways. He indicated his interest in further collaboration, and we've worked on that since. We had also the formal setup of the North Atlantic Ocean Cluster Alliance in Denmark last year. And finally, we had a meeting in Ålesund now this spring, which was really beneficial. So we had 3 meetings where people have been able to gather around the table, have had the opportunity to be introduced to the cluster activities and see what they're up to. The main thing for us then is obviously to take the next step. We formed the group, we've done the initial analysis. Now the question is, what are we going to do with it? And we're talking there about the steps that are the most important steps in the cluster activities, number 6 and 7. The stepping stones and the short-term tactical agenda. That's where we basically are in this work. And we tend to be, most cluster managers, working on that continuously, finding the low-hanging fruits in the clusters. Are there any projects that might actually lead to results within 12 months, 18 months within our collaboration? It is very difficult to try to establish a cluster with a mission to change the world in 20 years, because companies obviously are looking for the next annual report, seeing what can come out of that. So we need to be in line with what companies are saying, even though we need to have a long-term view. The long-term view is only good if you have short-term goals as well. And that was what's been happening with us now, and I wanted to go through some of the projects that we are quite pleased with that have come out of this work. This is what we do. I'm not asking you to read all this, but at every meeting that we have, we do similarly as we do within each cluster in each country, which is to say we want to have a dating system leading to projects that you think might be valuable between the clusters from different countries. This is really a tough task for many, for me as well. But you need to at least begin always or end the meetings by emphasizing the projects that you think might be of value. We're trying to make sure, as you're doing here so excellently here at this conference, to try to make sure that people are meeting and you have some purpose other than drinking coffee here. So it's basically the thing. I'm not going through any of all these projects. But the projects that we have already in the pipelines that I wanted to mention is that we've already established now contacts between offshore Denmark, the cluster in Denmark, and the Iceland Ocean Cluster, working with Greenland, And this is called the internationalization of SMEs through collaboration between Offshore Central Greenland, which is a sister organization of Offshore Denmark, and Iceland Ocean Cluster. So what is this? This is no more than trying to connect people that might have common interest in doing business together. And the Danes have said Icelanders tend to be quite good at working in Greenland. They have more experience with some of the Arctic provision of services in the Arctic. We have more knowledge in oil drilling and oil services in general. So there might be some kind of communication leading to projects. So we are already in the pipeline of working with this, meaning that we will hopefully this fall get some of the entrepreneurs to meet and see what comes out of that. Another project that we are really pleased with is called Project Sharing in the Faroe Islands. This is directed by Vinnuhúsið, House of Industry, based on the Icelandic version Verkefnamiðlun, and it covers all industry in the Faroe Islands with some added features such as mentor, where students gain guidance through their studies from people in the industry. What we realized in the ocean sector in Iceland is that even though we think we know everybody here in Iceland, it so happens that many of our students are doing isolated work at university level. They have difficulties connecting with companies. The CEOs are all open for it, but it's really time consuming to try to establish contacts with all these students, etc. So we've been working on that, and I have with me here in the podium people that have led that project from the Iceland Ocean Cluster. And this has been really successful in terms of connecting students and industry. And one thing that I should note is that, interestingly enough, we were looking at the background of some of the CEOs of the Iceland fisheries sector and the ocean sector as a whole. And it so happens that many of these people are not educated in these quite good universities that specialize in fisheries. But many of them had taken a project, maybe a project at the end of their studies, focusing on technology in fisheries, fish processing, working with MATIS and other projects or their predecessors. So it was very important to continue with that, to allow the students to be involved with these projects. So we were also looking at another project which is called Greenland Ocean Cluster and the Faroe Ocean Cluster. This has been a great experience, and I'm not promising that we will do this, or the Greenlanders or the Faroes, but they're working on it. And what has been the greatest experience for us here in Iceland is that Greenland is faced with problems that we understood better will probably be our problems in 5 or 10 years' time. Their ocean cluster will be combined with ocean tourism, oil drilling in the ocean, and fisheries. And the fact is, they are saying there is a lot of conflict already in the pipelines and already existing within these industries that they are faced with now. And I believe in many ways what we are having to realize, Icelanders as well, is the same will happen in Iceland. There will be conflicts, and there a cluster, a powerful cluster, can be really important to try to connect people, build trust. Another project that we already have established is called the Green Fishing Ship. It's a project now between NCE Maritime in Norway and the Iceland Ocean Cluster. This is a project which has a mission which is to basically try to connect people in ship engineering from both of these countries to see whether we can continue on the road to build the perfect ship, the green fishing ship. And in many ways, even though Icelanders have much smaller companies, and I stated it earlier today that we are probably saying that ship engineers in Iceland are more close to 30, maybe 30, 40, but we have in Norway companies that count in hundreds, at least one company. Many of these have hundreds or more employees. But the fact is, at least, we feel that many of our engineers that have been in close relationships with some of the fisheries have excellent ideas. And the question is, can we build trust enough to make sure that these ideas can be merged in somehow with these two countries so that we can build on that. And we're actually presenting tomorrow, publishing tomorrow, a short report here in Iceland indicating that our technicians if they would be allowed to build one ship or renovate one of these trawlers that we have in Iceland, with all the technology that they have, they can save energy for up to at least 20%, very carefully measured. So there is a significant value in this project if it realizes. Another project that I would like to mention, this is the project that I mentioned previously, and I just wanted to show you. We were really proud to receive from the Faroe Islands the project sharing page, which they are probably going to be publishing later this month. This is the project sharing in the Faroe Islands that they have collaborated with us on. So after the Icelandic project, we are now sharing this project. All the ideas are coming from the collaboration within this collaboration that we have on the North Atlantic scale. We're also talking with the Danes. They have interest in doing similar, and my dream is that we at the end will have Danish students working in Greenland, Icelandic students working in the Faroe Islands, vice versa. So that is basically, and I'm going to be interested to see what Christian Kristjánsson is going to tell us about his great project, which has to do with similar ideas, and I think there we should try to work together and see what we can come up with to combine these efforts. Finally, turning waste into value is a project that we've been working on. This is something that has been obviously a pride of the Icelanders. This is something that obviously we have done a lot with in the last century with researchers that are a world-class researcher. The guy who's standing there, Sigurður Arason, is probably the most famous one. Mattis has been in the forefront here, and what we have had interest in doing is to combine the efforts of some of the clusters. We are showing in a report that will be published soon from the Iceland Ocean Cluster that the utilization of the cod is approximately 43% in most of our neighboring countries. 43%, Greenland, Canada, Newfoundland, etc. We Icelanders are, with a landed cod, we are utilizing 95%, and we're utilizing 75% as we estimate of the cod. So the similar number from 45 to 50 would be 75%. We're saying even though we're a small nation, we have a message to tell, and I think we have seen quite a lot of interest from our friends in the Nordic as well to do more with this. We're not chemists, we're not the biologists, we're only trying to connect people that might be interested. My dream there is that we will have a club that's called the 100% Club. And we will only allow those to join that are fishermen that promise that they are utilizing every part of the fish. And I think by that we might smitten the whole industry by showing that there are fishing vessel owners in the Nordic that are doing it already, and we can continue on that track. At the end, I just wanted to show you the news coverage that we've had, very positive, and I'm demanding that many of our members in Iceland realize that even though we're always telling ourselves that media is not interested in fisheries, that's bullock. I have no faith in that. If we just provide the media with all these interesting news that we have, the interesting stories about many of the entrepreneurs that are doing interesting things, and even just to tell them about our collaboration on a North Atlantic scale within the marine sector, we have received very favorable news coverage so far. The next step that we are planning is basically something that we have to realize is a complicated one. What we've done so far, we've done the initial analysis, we've done some projects that are showing good results. If we are going all the way, like clusters always have to do, we need to build trust between entrepreneurs. Then the question becomes how much is competition and how difficult is it to try to do this over borders, etc. I am not sure about the end result there, but I'm absolutely sure that if you provide them with the low-hanging fruits, we will be able to show people how dynamic relationships over borders can also be. Thank you.